Williamson Herald High School football highlights are sponsored by Moody's Tire and Auto Service with 2 locations to serve you in Williamson County. Moody's Tire, doing it right for over 70 years. Find out more at moody'stire.com.
Well, hello everybody and welcome into this edition of the Williamson Herald High School Sports Extra, brought to you by Moody's. I'm Joe Williams, the sports editor of the Williamson Herald, along with our right-hand guy, Charles Pulliam, a multimedia journalist who does a little bit of everything. Literally, we were kidding him last week or a couple weeks ago about sweeping floors. I thought I saw a broom in his hand this week. And, of course, our old friend, Maurice Patton, who is the executive editor of MoPattonSports.com, but he is now also the sports editor for the Columbia Daily Herald. And welcome back home, we say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Even though you hadn't gone anywhere, have you?
I'm not going anywhere.
That's what we like to hear. Guys, we've got a big weekend of high school football coming up Friday night, and it opens up the biggest game right here at Centennial High School when the Brentwood Bruins come in to play the Cougars. You know, Ron Crawford told me 4 weeks ago after a game, he said, look, our next 3 games are our season. We get past those, then we can talk about the 3 games after that. But if we don't do well in these next 3, the last won't matter. Well, what mattered is they won all 3 of those, and they are sitting still with a chance to win the region title.
And suddenly, if you ask Matt Kreisky, he would probably tell you what Ron Crawford told you 3 weeks ago. These next 3 weeks are their season, because even though the Cougars are 6-1, 4-0 in Region 7 5A, their next 3 games are Brentwood here, Rossview here, and the long trip to Paris to catch a Henry County team that I'm sure James Counts Jr. has reminded them how both games against the Cougars went last year. So these are the 3 that matter for these guys.
Yeah. Henry County maybe not as strong as they were last year. Some would tell you. Some will tell you that at this point it doesn't matter. These teams have grown in the 7 games they've played so far.
Well, the region's just a giant logjam at that top there, and Brentwood's the one that was kind of the outside looking in for a while, but they still have that opportunity. And for Centennial, they're kind of in the driver's seat, and I don't know if you're Matt Kreisky, I think you like that, but maybe you don't like the pressure now it's kind of built in as we go into these, because now they got a target on their back and they got to really push through.
Earlier today, Ron Crawford told me one of his biggest concerns was that Matt Kreisky had 2 weeks to get ready for Brentwood. Matt Kreisky told me one of his biggest concerns was that Ron Crawford had 2 weeks to get ready for Centennial. This should be one of those great games. Talk about folks trying to get in position. Lincoln County comes calling on Summit. And, fellas, if Summit can win this game, it puts them in a position to face a big game next week against Stewart's Creek. But all of a sudden, we're not talking about Summit getting in the playoffs. We're talking about Summit just might host a playoff game.
Absolutely. And you talk about many seasons. Again, Summit, they've got Lincoln County coming to their place. They go to Stewart's Creek next week, and then they finish up at Columbia. And I saw Lincoln County and Columbia last week. Summit may have their hands full with Lincoln County's run game. They've got a kid, Luke Phillips, who went for 252 yards and 4 touchdowns on 28 carries against Columbia. Now, Summit's not Columbia. Columbia's still looking for their first win, and we'll talk more about them in a second. But, you know, this Luke Phillips kid is a kid who only moved to running back from cornerback about 3-4 weeks ago. Now, he put it on the ground a few times, put it on the ground enough to keep Columbia in it. But when he wasn't putting it on the ground, he was breaking off 50, 60, 70-yarders. So I'm sure Brian Coleman, who was actually at that game, saw plenty of number 8 for Lincoln County, and that'll be public enemy number 1 for the Spartan defense Friday night.
But Mo is right. The Columbia defense not quite what the Summit defense is. And, Charles, those Spartans have really made a name for themselves this year.
Well, at 3-1 in the region, they're actually tied for second, right behind Independence. And you think of where they are, Stewart's Creek 3-1 there, and Stewart's Creek actually has the tough game this week where they got to play Shelbyville, which is 2-2. So we're getting a lot worked out this week at that region standings, which will be pretty interesting to see, because a team like Summit, which was knocking on the door for the playoffs last year, has a really good opportunity here, like you said, to be at home for that first week.
And that would be massive. That would be big. Not just in the playoffs, but getting to host a playoff game. A couple of teams that have playoff experience hoping to continue this year. Franklin goes up to Mcgavock. The Rebels on a roll. Big win over Wilson Central. Mcgavock struggling a little bit at 1-6 overall. Maurice, that still doesn't matter when you go into Mcgavock High School, and I've played there before. it's still having to go to Mcgavock.
You know, and I think at this point, Jay Gore is stressing to those guys, play for pride. And that can be a heck of a motivator. At this point, obviously in 6A, everybody's in the playoffs. Mcgavock is most likely looking at a road game, which means a trip to Memphis. But they'd like to mess things up for somebody else. And with Franklin coming to their place, Franklin's got a game that most people would say is for the region championship. Next week when they go to Mount Juliet, Mcgavock would kind of like to pull a Lee Corso and say, not so fast, my friends, on that one. And if they could screw that up, catch Franklin looking a little bit ahead, that's kind of the key for Donnie Webb and the bunch over on Hillsborough Road, is to focus on the Raiders this week, focus on Mount Juliet next week.
Big win last week against Wilson Central. Big game coming up next week against Mount Juliet. Man, this is the perfect trap game for the Rebels.
Oh, there's a couple on the schedule for this week, and the Rebels are definitely one of those. But they did have a great showing against Wilson Central, and that was one of the games that they had circled for a very long time. So it was nice to see them be able to score late, get the victory, 42-35 win against Wilson Central, and that really just showed that Franklin's for real. 6-0 in their last. They lost their opener to Centennial and won 6 straight. So for the Rebels to keep this going, they're a fun team to watch. They got the balance, they got the size. Hopefully they avoid that trap.
Yeah, I would have told you the Rebel defense was stronger than the Rebel offense. They sure didn't show it last week, but hey, that's why you play the game. You've also got Ravenwood. Started out tough. They're 4-3 overall, but they're 3-1 in this Region 3 6A. They got to go up to Overton, and you know, the Johnny Bobcats aren't that bad.
They're not that bad. Steve Williams has got a bunch that can hurt you. They've got some guys, obviously Theo Jackson, the UT commitment, but Sam Mast, the quarterback, sophomore quarterback who started for the baseball team as a freshman catcher last spring. This kid has really come on for them at quarterback, and they've been able to transition Jackson more and more away from quarterback and out onto the perimeter where he can really do some damage. They've got a nice running back back there as well. Tavares Travis had 170 yards and 3 touchdowns a couple of weeks ago. So they've got some guys that, if you're not careful, can hurt you. And Ravenwood has shown some vulnerabilities at times. So it's almost a, which Raptor team do you get Friday night? If you get the good one with McCain Marrow throwing the ball all over the place and John Rawl and Nathan Freeman making plays for him in the passing game, it could get ugly real quick. Or it could get ugly real quick in the other direction, which makes it interesting.
Going to be, this is a bunch that's coming off that big win over Lebanon where they really just manhandled the Blue Devils. It won't be that easy Friday night.
No, and this is a Ravenwood team that's 3-1 in the region, so this is kind of the showing here. What can they do against a team like Overton, because they got to go to Wilson Central next week as well. So scheduling wise, Ravenwood has 2 big weeks here, and whether they finish in that middle tier or upper tier, this is where it starts right here.
And this is another place, this is another region where we'll start to see things finally start to drop out. Everybody's so loaded the back end of the schedule this year with region games so heavily that we're waiting late. I do have to give one shout out though to the Ravenwood team, and particularly Taj Williams, their big defensive end. No, he's not related to me, but I wish he were. Last Friday night, defensive end, he scores twice. Third play of the game, causes the fumble, picks up the fumble, and runs it in from 22 yards out. And he gets called back on an illegal block in the back. About 12 minutes later, they partially block a punt. He reaches up, pulls the wounded duck out of the air. He goes 32 yards for the touchdown and gets called back for an illegal block in the back. Most linemen don't get 2 touchdowns in a career. He got 2 in about 15 minutes and had them both called back.
So then did Todd just tell his teammates, don't block for me?
The really bad part is he could have and he would have scored. Both of them were well behind the play. What he did do in between, though, was got in as part of the scoring on a pair of safeties. Seen a couple of games where you get 2 safeties in the game. Taj was in on 2 safeties in a quarter. Don't think I've ever seen that before. Had to give the man a shout out. He deserves it because it'll never go down in the record book. Hang in there, big guy. I'm proud of you. We'll be back. Cover the rest of the games coming up in Williamson County right after this.
Visit us at Moody's Tire for all your tire and automotive needs.
Stop by and see us at 1600 Columbia Avenue.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Williamson Herald High School Sports Extra. Joe Williams, Charles Pulliam, the one and only Maurice Patton. Maurice, now that you're the editor of not just MoPattonSports.com, but also the Columbia Daily Herald, we're going to come to you for the Columbia at Independence game this week. This is one that Charles and I were talking about trap games earlier. This is a trap game for Indy, I think.
No, it's not.
Okay. Could be. Let me rephrase. Thank you. Could be.
You know, theoretically, when you look at it, I mean, Columbia's 0-7 on the year. They're 0-4 in region play. Indy comes in here rolling. They're 7-0. They've won 22 straight games. They're 4-0 in region play. This could be a game where if you were going to look past somebody, Indy would have every opportunity to do that. I think Scott Blade has got these guys so focused on the next game that I don't think it's possible for them to look past, and that makes it bad for Columbia, I think, because really, again, I saw them last week against Lincoln County. This is just a team that hasn't had a whole lot of success, obviously, on the field, on the scoreboard. And Friday night was a game, it was 31-28 at one point. Columbia had gotten down 24-7 early, battled back into it, got it down to 31-28. Came up short in the red zone. Lincoln County goes back down, scores, makes it 38-28, and pulls away from there. So you get a 52-28 final, but really the game was closer than that, and it's unfortunate. First-year coach Jason Hoth is kind of saying at this point, we've got to try to embrace that spoiler role, keep the kids' heads in it, try to pick somebody off here late. I think they're going to have a tough time doing that Friday night against Independence at Independence. Again, this team is really focused, and coming off of last year's 15-0, I think they've got some guys who don't want to have won that state championship as sophomores and juniors. A Landon Guidry, a Brandon Hines, some of those seniors, they want, quote, their own state championship. And I've said it before, I think these guys do it a little bit differently than last year's team, but they certainly know how to get it done, and 7-0 kind of points to that.
Rolled up a bunch of points last week, Charles, against a Shelbyville team that's not a bad team, but, Summit beat them, rolled up 71 points. Independence just, I hate to say they did what they wanted to, but they basically did what they wanted to. And, it's kind of, I guess, what we kind of expect Friday night.
Well, definitely, and this is a team that each week we're like, well, there's another big test coming up. There's another big test that started with, you go back to the Summit matchup, an up-and-coming Summit team, no problem there. The Shelbyville, Stewart's Creek, you name them, they keep coming. And now it's kind of a top versus a bottom in the region. And when you got Independence, like you said, loaded with weapons, I think Mo hit the point right on the head when it comes to a team that wants their own championship or their own glory, in a sense, where, yeah, we were on the team that went unbeaten too, but hey, we did it on our own too. That says a lot, and I think that's a huge motivation factor for Coach Scott Blade.
One other note on that one, it's going to be fun when they've got that many different running backs that they can throw at you. The only other undefeated team in Williamson County gets to be at home for one of the last times of the year. When East Hickman comes calling on Fairview, the Yellow Jackets sitting there, 7-8-0 now, 7-0. They're all happy, and they may be happy, but I'll bet you Chris Hughes has them under control for homecoming and this game, because here again is a trap game. East Hickman, I think, winless at this point, maybe one win, but next week got to go to Camden, does Fairview, and that may well be the region title game.
You think that, but Camden went to Cheatham County this past weekend and lost as well. So the region championship game may have been when Fairview beat Cheatham County 42-38 a couple weeks ago. But you're right about this Fairview team. They're 7-0. They're 4-0 in region play. I looked it up a couple of weeks ago. There were 27 undefeated teams in the state of Tennessee. 25 of them were ranked in the Associated Press various top 10s. Fairview was one of the two that was not, and they still aren't. They are number 11 in Class 3A this week, and I don't know who Chris Hughes has upset.
Nice catch, by the way.
Yeah. Self-censoring here.
Yes.
I wanted to save Charles the trouble. But I don't know who Chris has upset, but the Yellow Jackets, I think they can lay claim to the best undefeated team that isn't ranked right now for sure. But I think if they keep winning, then eventually somebody will have to come around to them.
Scary part about that is that plays right into Chris Hughes' hand. He's sitting out there talking about, here we are undefeated, we get no respect. Oh, I'm telling you, I guarantee you he is using that, Charles.
Well, maybe he didn't upset someone and he's got a friend. If you go the other way around, I feel like that's a good Chris Hughes move in a way. But this Fairview team, between your backs and Bethard and Caldwell and the big line and a sophomore quarterback, they got all the weapons the Peace have been showing. And I think that Cubs game 2 weeks ago, 42-38, where they had to score late to get the win, that was their big test, their big moment. It's like, hey, we're for real now. And now they just got to get through and work their way into the playoffs. This is an impressive team for sure.
They have been. Another team trying to get a good spot in the playoffs is a Page squad that has gotten better and better, but they got to go down to Giles County. And Mo, I think you've seen Giles County this year, haven't you?
I have. I saw them against Marshall County a few weeks ago. Both of them were undefeated at the time. Marshall County pulled away late, put up a big number there, and won that one. But Giles County is a team that can do some damage, and Charles Rathbone and that bunch is well familiar with both the personnel and with the coaching staff, with David O'Connor being back on the sideline over there. But they've got a quarterback, John Backus. He's a junior. It's about 6'3", 6'4", about 190. Big kid. He's pretty in the pocket, I tell you. He's fun to watch. And getting him off his spot may not necessarily be the best thing for you either, because he can move around a little bit and he can turn it up on you. And when they turn and hand it off, they've got Arkell Reed back there, who split some time last year running back with another real good kid, Jordan Tucker. He's got it by himself now, and he's a pile mover. He can run through you, he can run around you. So Page has got their work cut out for him on defense, both in the passing game and in the run game. Interested to see what the youngster Bubba Johnson brings to the party Friday night down at the Brickyard.
Charles, this is a Page team that's on a roll right now, but in the past they've occasionally stubbed their toe. They really need to keep this rolling and get a win here and get ready for Marshall County.
Well, I think they've won their last 3 here. They're coming off the bye week. They should be well rested. And like Mo said, Bubba Johnson, just the freshman out there, that guy he keeps turning heads, and he'll just go through everyone. And he's just a freshman. And that quarterback, Van Landingham, has done great too and showed that he can move the ball very well. This is a team that had, almost 500 yards of offense against BGA earlier. So they could put points on the board. They've won their last 2 meetings with Giles County. I think this is a good one for Page to try to keep going. Plus, they're 3-1 on the road this year. So, hey, maybe they don't mind being away from home.
Speaking of BGA, they've got a big one as Harding comes calling. And while they've lost 3 of their last 4, they're still sitting right there at the top of their Division 2A East Middle District 2, I guess it is.
Wow.
I get confused.
East Middle is in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think literally there are 4 schools in the region.
I don't even, and I shouldn't say it, but I don't try to figure out the regions and that kind of thing in D2A, because I can't keep up with it. I'm not smart enough. So this is a region game, but that's about all I know as far as that goes. And Ezel Harding comes in 3-4, but I got an interesting couple of numbers here. In their 3 wins, they're averaging 60 points a game.
Scott Smith back?
No, a guy named Craig Campbell, who came up from Chattanooga. It's his second year, I think. 60 points in their 3 wins, 9.3 in their 4 losses. So, feast or famine for the Eagles?
Or is it competition versus small schools?
Well said there, too. Some more numbers for you on the BGA side. So they won their first 4, started 4-0, obviously. They're 3-4, or they've, lost 1 and 3 of their last 4 games. But in those games, offensively, they've given up almost 2,000 yards. Just shot, 1923. That's a stat I bet Rock Batten does not like hearing. But this is a team that just defensively, what's going on here for a BGA club that usually has been quite well on that side of the ball. There's some injuries out there. I know Bo Jewell wasn't playing there. A couple guys got hurt, knee injuries as well. But this is a team that is floundering defensively, and they really got to straighten it out.
The hard part, guys, is that at that level, at that division, at that level, 1, 2 injuries take kids out for 3-4 weeks, especially if they're season-ending it, can destroy a team.
Well, and the thing is, 1 or 2 injuries at that level, they don't just impact you at 1 or 2 spots.
No.
They can impact you at 3 or 4 or 5 spots if you're not careful, between the number of different units that guy plays on and the number of different moves that you have to make up for that guy. So injuries kind of have the ripple effect when you're playing with the short rosters that you play with in D2A sometimes.
And D2AA, appropriate, we're at Centennial. Coach for the last few years here, our buddy Brian Rector, went up to Father Ryan. He's got to come back to Williamson County Friday night to take on Brentwood Academy. It might not be a very fun trip, I'm afraid.
No, I don't think so. This is an Eagles team coming off a loss, their first loss to a state team since November of 2014. They were undefeated against Tennessee teams last year en route to their title. And they lost to NBA last week in just one of those knockout, drag-out D2 rivalry kind of games. 31-24, came right down in the end. BA had the Sports Center top 10 play, which of course we'll show from a couple angles here. But they didn't get the W, and I think the guys involved in that play, your Jeremiah Oatsfalls, your Cam Johnsons, your Lawrence Degrees, they would trade that play for the win for sure, because this was they gave up just about everything. And a Ty Chandler, who had almost 340 yards of offense running for NBA, he had an 85-yard touchdown called back for a block in the back on top of that. So think of this guy running in there, averaging 15 yards a carry. He just blew him up. So BA is going to be a little more adjusted, I think.
Big week for blocking the backs. But yeah, I don't think I'd want to be the Irish this week.
I don't think this is a good spot for the Irish. And again, they're 4-3 overall. They're 0-3 in Division II play, Division II AA play. Oh, and it's homecoming at Brentwood.
Okay, that might take their mind off of some things.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's not going to take their mind off last week.
No, it's not. It's not. This is just playing Brentwood Academy after a loss just isn't where you want to be, I don't think. Yeah. So this is a tough spot for Coach Rector and the Irish, I think. And I wonder if Brian's chances might not have been better with last year's Centennial team on Friday night than what he's going into Brentwood Academy with.
All right.
I'll just leave that there.
10 of the 11 schools inside Williamson County will be playing Friday night, 2 of them facing each other, of course. The one that gets the night off will be Grace Christian. And guys, you want some numbers? Let me throw a couple of numbers at you. Kid by the name of Austin Amore. Watched him when he was a Cowboy, Franklin Cowboy out of Jim Warren Park. He's he thinks he's a junior quarterback, maybe a sophomore. Junior. He's the junior, okay. Friday night in their 77-60 win, they had to score. Amore throws for 200 and some odd yards and
37.
5 touchdowns. He runs for 136, 126 and 4 touchdowns and had 140-something yards and kick returns. The kid scored 9 touchdowns in a single ball game.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
And then team-wise, 77 points. We've been talking county records here.
That may well be the new one.
Summit went and had 71 earlier this year. Mo dug up some stats on Brentwood Academy, getting right up there. Page had low 70s as well, but 77? I think that's the one. What do we got?
I talked to Rusty Smith earlier this week. They touched the ball 12 times. They scored on the first 11 possessions, and they took a knee on the 12th. They scored every time they had the ball.
Wow. That was a game against Mount Pleasant. I would not have expected that there.
Well, Mount Pleasant's struggling. They're undefeated. They're winless this year. So, it was kind of that perfect storm. But again, 77-60. It wasn't like Grace Christian was just throwing the points up there. They had to have them. It was very arena ball-ish.
Yeah, just like Summit earlier this year talking about 71. They stayed close. We had to keep scoring. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't let the week go without mentioning those 2 kids, Taj Williams and Austin Amore.
And Grace Christian's off this week, and I guess Mr. Amore could use the week off, huh?
I think he woke up sometime Sunday morning in time to go to church. I think that's probably when he actually woke up. There's a look at what's going on this week. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Williamson Herald High School Sports Extra. For Charles Pulliam and Mo Patton, as the Twitter feed numbers and names, handles go sliding by, I'm Joe Williams. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time here at the Williamson Herald.